Hey all, welcome to Eliza's Notes. I am Maria Rose TJ of 30C BA English from K College, Mananam. Today we are dealing with romantic criticism from the 5th semester paper Literary Criticism and Theory. Initially, let us know about the Romantic Age. The Romantic period is said to have lasted about 48 years from the French Revolution in 1789 to the accession of Queen Victoria in 1837. It was also known as the Age of Wordsworth since most of the Romantic poets died earlier. It is alternatively called the Age of Revolution. The American Revolution of 1776, popular wars of independence in Poland, Spain, Greece, and the spirit of liberty, equality, and fraternity of the French Revolution made it a time of hope and change. The major writers of this period were William Blake, William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Lord Byron, John Keats, P.B. Shelley, Charles Lamb, William Hazlitt, and Walter Scott. The function of poetry had its own definitions in every age, but in Romantic age it is defined very slowly and gradually. Poetry was earlier considered as just imitation with some kind of pleasure and enlightenment. But in Romantic age, poetry became a way of expression of the poet's emotions and the principle of spontaneity, that is, poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings of the poet himself was given emphasis. This shift in the view on poetry is a great aspect of Romantic age. In 1798, the publication of Lyrical Ballads, a collection of poems by William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge, is generally considered to have marked the beginning of English Romantic movement in literature. It's a collection of 23 poems, 19 written by Wordsworth and 4 by Coleridge. In Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth and Coleridge planned to include two kinds of poetry, one in which the subject matter is supernatural and in the other, subject matter is from ordinary life. The former was represented with a single contribution of Coleridge, the rhyme of the ancient mariner, where a supernatural element is represented in a simple and ordinary manner. The latter was illustrated in the poems of Wordsworth like The Thorn, The Idiot Boy, etc., in which we could see a coloring of imagination was added to the ordinary things and they are presented with an unusual aspect. He chose common topics in his poems because they can gain a place in the reader's heart and thereby slowly attain a maturity or an attachment to their daily life. In the preface, Wordsworth opined that more than an imitation, poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions. Now let us know about the authors of lyrical ballads. William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth, a world acclaimed English romantic poet, was born on 7 April 1770 in northwestern England. The Prelude, a semi autobiographical poem of his early years, is generally considered to be his magnum opus and it was published posthumously by his wife. Wordsworth was England's poet laureate from 1843 until his death in 1850. Samuel Taylor Coleridge was an English poet, literary critic, philosopher, and theologian who, with his friend William Wordsworth, was a founder of Romantic movement in England and a member of the Lake Poets. His lyrical ballads, written with William Wordsworth, heralded the English Romantic movement, and his Biographia Literaria, published in 1817, is the most significant work of general literary criticism produced in the English Romantic period. After first publishing his lyrical ballads, Wordsworth felt the need to explain and defend his new techniques in poetry, in the hope of attracting an audience who would continue to understand and appreciate his work. He wrote a preface for the first edition in 1800 and made revisions throughout his life. The 1802 version formed the basis for the final edition of 1850. The preface received accolades such as the Manifesto of Romantic Age, Wordsworth's best known critical work, and his most original essay in aesthetics. It's time to analyze the major points discussed in the preface. In Preface to Lyrical Ballads, William Wordsworth says that in his poems he had selected incidents and situations from the life of common people. He describes them by the representation of common life and through the usage of common man's language in his poems. In the past, the life of ordinary people has never been a subject of poetry. For the first time, he democratizes poetry and gives a universal appeal to it. People living in the modern cities are very much artificial and far away from the simplicity of nature. Therefore, they don't express the reality of human life. Wordsworth says that in lyrical ballads, humble and rustic life has been chosen as the theme of poetry because it holds simplicity, serenity, and tranquility. The rustic people express their feelings and emotions through simple, unelaborated, and unsophisticated way. It is more philosophical and permanent than the language used by the city dwellers and the earlier poets. Wordsworth defines poetry as the spontaneous overflow of the powerful feelings. In order to output genuine feelings in poems, Wordsworth avoids the use of personifications of abstract ideas and serious dictions in his poems so far as possible for making poetry intelligible to all types of readers. The language of his poetry is near to that of prose. The incidents of life, the natural objects around us, and the common feelings of men, as well as our sorrow and happiness, failure and success, should get a ready appeal in poetry without false description. Wordsworth accuses many contemporary poets of writing triviality and meanness, both of thought and language, in their poetry. They followed the worn out neoclassical style of poetry, using a lot of artificial, bombastic phrases and dead personifications. In their poetry, actions and situations are more important than spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings and passion. There is a lack of true emotionality in such poems, and it is like more dishonorable to the writer's own character. From this perspective, Wordsworth proudly says that the poems in lyrical ballads has a worthy purpose. That is, it has some sort of worth or value. This purpose was not something planned, but his habits of meditations had helped him in it. And we could see that only the poems of a poet with sensibility that regulates his feelings are of value. Wordsworth defines a poet as a man of more comprehensive soul. A poet is different from other men because he has a more lively sensibility and long, deeply thoughts, and his emotions and passions are more enthusiastic and more powerful. He has a greater knowledge of human nature. The poet has a greater degree of imaginative power than other men. The poet should be able to successfully observe and depict the thoughts and feelings that people have when they are in a state of excitement. That is, the stimulation people experience in a given situation. In this way, when a poet successfully composes a poem, that poem should have a noticeable effect on its reader as it is relatable. When a poet successfully communicates their emotions, readers will be vicariously enlightened. For Wordsworth, the essence of poetry comes in the form of a profound rendering, that is, an in depth depiction of emotions which help the reader understand themselves better. Even though Wordsworth asks for the purpose or value of poems. He says that readers are inclined to give importance to the subject rather than to the purpose of an art. Human minds can be easily excited without the application of any violent emotions or stimulants. Therefore, Wordsworth opinions this act of exciting human minds with emotions and feelings rather than giving priority to the purpose is the best service in which a writer can be engaged. He believes that human minds are losing its ability to distinguish among the emotions they encounter. There are many elements which destroys this discriminative power of human minds and tends to go after silly emotions. The most effective of these courses are the great national events where he mentions of the socio-political changes in the English society. After the agricultural revolution, people moved away from the countryside and farmland into cities, where industrial revolution provided job and technological innovations. Romanticism can be considered as the reaction against industrialization, seeking more attention to nature. It was also a revolt against the aristocratic social and political norms of the Age of Enlightenment. Calls for freedom and abolition of slavery became louder. The French Revolution became an important influence on the political thinking of many romantic figures at this time as well. With the advent of industrialization, there is an increasing accumulation of men in cities. The melancholic life and uniformity in lifestyle of the individuals craved for something extraordinary that could excite human minds. But as a response to this urge, the literature and theatrical exhibitions degraded to some extent. The renowned works of Shakespeare and Milton were neglected and is getting replaced by useless frantic novels and stupid stories. He is ashamed about it and feels a guilt that he had done nothing to prevent such a degradation. Wordsworth believes that forgetting about such renowned writers is a great evil and feels melancholic about it. In the end, Wordsworth states that his time is almost up and concludes the essay in a hope that some other writers of distinguishable success will emerge and put an end to this great evil. I hope you had a good understanding about Romantic Age and the preface to Lyrical Ballads. Thank you for watching and have a great time.